Oh yeah!
Welcome everyone to this edition of Fish Stripes Live After Dark. We'll be here talking about the LA Dodgers and the Miami Marlins series, as it is going to be a later starting time for this series. I'm joined here today. First off, we do have a smaller panel. We might have someone else joining us tonight, but as for now, we have Mr. Eli Sussman, and making his long-awaited return. He's in the pitch black there somewhere. Louis Adayo Weiss. Louis, it's also great to have you back on here since a long time.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me, Eli. It's fun. Got about an hour drive, so just in time to catch first pitch when I reach my destination. But I'm ready to talk some Marlins and arguably the best team in the sport right now that they're going to be going up against.
Before we get to that team, let's talk about the other team the Marlins faced in that division a few days ago, and that would be the San Diego Padres. And I believe something that a lot of us didn't have, Marlins actually taking that series 2-1. Really impressive performance. And even hitting-wise, as they scored at least 3 runs in every game, which might not be a lot, but for this Marlins team and just the streak that they were, to just have that many consecutively really was something.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry to laugh, but Nolan calling him Louise instead of Louis. No E at the end.
Bro,
no Louise.
No Thelma.
Let's start off with that series. Eli, what are your overall thoughts, your takeaways from that series, and the Marlins taking 2-1 against a playoff team and a team that made probably the biggest move in a long time at the trade deadline?
Yeah, you say you're surprised. I was the one that had the Marlins taking 2 out of 3, so it wasn't totally out of the blue. Although when you add it all together, they were outscored by the Padres because of the way that last game went. That last game, I guess, is when the Padres really showed their might. They put up that huge number in the very first inning against Pablo, and then they pounded on it from there. So that didn't look close. Things got pretty ugly in that final game. The previous 2 before that, yeah, there were a lot of little positive things. I think just inevitability. As bad as this Marlins offense looked at times, the fact that they had that kind of streak, almost 3 weeks without scoring more than 3 runs in a game, like the talent on this team is a little bit better than that. Even with all the young guys, even with some of these veterans that are looking over the hill or playing through injuries or a combination of both, like they were better than that. I don't think there was ever a point where this was really one of the worst offenses in Marlins history. It was only a matter of time before they started to show a little bit more life. And they did in this series. I think they scored 10 total runs in this series. Usually it takes them 2 or 3 series to do that. And I guess really against every starting pitcher, they put up some sort of fight in that. Peyton Burdick had that game-winning hit in the middle game. That was a positive sign to see. Blade, I think in the first game of the series, he hit a home run. I'm pretty sure this was the Padres series when he did that, his first home run at Lone Depot Park as well. And I want to highlight on the pitching side, Dylan Floro. I was really high on him last year. I was really harsh on him earlier this year when it just looked like he would not be the same guy coming off his shoulder issue. And gradually we've seen him get a little bit more like his former self. So much so that I thought he could be dealt at the trade deadline for something in return. Instead, they hold on to him. And in the middle game, I think it was the second game of the series that he got the save and he struck out 3 guys, something he hadn't done all year. I think he hit 95 with his fastball velo, if not 96 in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's looking a lot like the guy he was last year. And frankly, in the aftermath, we'll talk about Anthony Bender's Tommy John surgery. We could talk about Tanner Scott being super volatile. I mean, Dylan Flora was kind of in the exact same spot he was last year, where he seems to be the most reliable guy. He's probably going to get a lot of save opportunities moving forward.
Yeah, and
now
I want to
Eli,
go back. No, go ahead, Lewis. Go ahead.
I had him. If it's all right with you, Eli, it's funny. I was on that like Flora could bring back a decent return kind of like bandwagon pre-deadline. I remember tweeting a lot about how he's been a lone bright spot amid what has been an otherwise under performing overall team. But yeah, like he gave up runs, I believe, in his first 2 outings of the season, and then he kind of just went on a roll where he was just putting up like zeros, and obviously like he doesn't strike out guys, and maybe that's because of the funky mechanics. But I wanted to ask you because I think you're kind of like the guy that I'll go to when I compare someone relative to performance, or maybe it's just physical makeup and the way in which their mechanics look on the mound. Does he remind you a little bit of like a Tony Watson? Not that he's throwing like a low 3/4, but it's 2-seam slider, and it's like consistent like 3 or sub 3 ERAs, and he's just efficiently good. Like that. I was very scared when Mattingly noted to me the other day that he really had considered ninth inning alternatives, and yet it took a little bit for Flora to kind of show what he did at the end of last year. But then he comes in that second game that you noted, and he gives up the 2 base hits, and you're really scared. But he shuts it down after that. I believe he struck out. I may be wrong, but it may have been either Bell or Grisham with like a 95-mile-an-hour fastball on the outside part of the plate, and it was like painted. It was beautiful. And then, but like he's just like one of those guys that like even when he was on the Dodgers, his former team that he'll likely pitch against this weekend, he was one of those guys like with the Scott Alexanders and like a Caleb Ferguson that kind of just like went under the radar. When really, like when you look at the amalgam of what makes a great team great, he's just another one of those like really nice complementary pieces. And unfortunately, it seems like he's like among the better players on the team. And I don't say that to degrade him or any way and be condescending, but it's just like, you want a guy like that to be good, but you also want him to be surrounded by other good and well-performing players to kind of like supplement a winning roster. And I kind of feel bad for him at some points. It's like he's kind of like beauty beneath the madness of what has been like a team ridden with instability, especially lately.
Yeah, and they still have one more year of control over him for next year. I think that was a big reason why they didn't feel super pressured to trade him, because he could be a positive piece. They were, for a while, it was just that question about, are we sure he's going to get back to what he was last year? Are we sure he's going to be somebody they even tender a contract to next year? Because he's making decent money. It's like $3 million this year. It'll be a raise probably to $4 million next year for a team that really pinches pennies generally in the bullpen. Like he'll be one of their most highly paid relievers in several years next year. He's making $4 million in an arbitration salary. So it just comes to whether they feel he's easy to replace. And I don't know how easy he is to replace, because when he is on, it's those 3, it's that deep pitch mix for reliever. It's not just like a 2-trick pony, as they say. It's a little bit deeper in terms of what he can do. It could be 4 when he needs it to be.
Now, Daniel, I want your take on this too, because I value your opinion. Do you guys think, because we've seen lately a lot of teams have kind of just avoided arbitration. I mean, the Braves are not really doing that with their players. They're locking their guys up pre-arb.
Yeah.
But do you think maybe that the front office says like, hey, like they kind of come to more of a realization like this guy, like trading him was something that we almost had to do and maybe should have done. But do you think maybe they kind of just like avoid arbitration and sign him to like a 2 or maybe 3-year extension? And I understand like there's a level of volatility with relievers, because it's very like relievers are probably the most random at chance players on a roster, given the short duration of like the time in which they're playing and the games. But do you think maybe that he's like really want to lock up on, say, like a team-friendly deal, but provide him some security? Not that he wouldn't have a job elsewhere, because he's obviously valuable in what he does, but he could be of value to us. And even if you locked him up to, say, like a 2-year extension.
Like a Richard Blyer type deal.
Yeah, but I think he strikes out more batters than Blyer.
A little more than that.
So I would think he deserves a little bit more. Like I wouldn't like maybe like an Andrew Chafin level deal, like 2 years, $14 million. I mean, do you guys think he'd be a guy worth at least committing long-term dollars, if you want to say that in Marlins terms too?
I think if they were already committed on Richard Blyer, I think they could definitely go for Flora, the guy who's younger. As you mentioned, the guy who could strike out more, a guy who's been known to, maybe to get out of struggles and can even, save games rather. You know, and you mentioned that contract like Andrew Chafin. It just really depends if the Marlins want to spend that much on a reliever. But they have done guaranteed money to relievers before. I said like Richard Blyer, and even before this year, even though it's not as much as you mentioned Floro, like a guy like Sharna Armstrong, they even gave guaranteed money to, and they had him for a couple months, and they let go of him and just ate that money. But with a guy with Dylan Floro, the way he's been producing, even though it's kind of been up and down, but recently it's been a lot of up. I could definitely see that type of contract to Miami. I don't know about 17, $14 million. I don't know if they want to commit $7 million on just a relief pitcher that can have inconsistencies. But I could definitely see like a 10 million 2 year, or even maybe like a 12 million 3 year type of deal. So it's less money per year, that they'll really have to go through with the reliever. And I do think they want to have Flora for a couple more years because, like you meant, like Richard Blyer, who's older, they gave him a 2 year deal. Dylan Flora was, I believe, 4 years younger. You give him a 3 year deal, lock him up there for $12 million, and you're spending like $4 million on a reliever. That's good money. Look at Anthony Bass next year. I believe he has an option for $3 million, and for Dylan Flora, you give him a couple more, and right there, it's the same thing. I believe like you can definitely give it to Dylan Flora, but I don't know if you want to give him 2 years at that kind of money like Andrew Chafin. I think 3 years and just maybe like $12 million would really be a good point for Flora, and I think he'll take it. I think he'll want that.
I understand, and maybe if given that baseball doesn't have a salary cap, incentives obviously have been a thing that we've seen teams do. I mean, you look at like a guy like Adam Wainwright, and obviously it's a different scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Older starting pitcher, expectations tend to be tampered because of that age and the workload that they shovel primarily. But maybe you go for like you're saying, maybe like a 3 year, like almost like a Kenta Maeda thing or a Tyler Anderson thing, where I know I'm citing starters, but you incentivize it. If you finish, say, said number of games, or you save said number of games, or you pitch in said number of games, then you could, get incentives, maybe like $150,000 here for 50 games pitched, and then another $150,000 for 55, little things like that. I mean, personally, I think Floro has a track record of success that I think $7 million isn't out of the question. And I want anybody listening to know that we're not reporting anything. We're just kind of speculating. I posed the question merely: is he a guy that you think is worth locking up? And yeah, I mean, if we put that question out on Twitter later, maybe I'd love to hear what other people think. Personally, I mean, I'm on that boat, but I also don't want to spend, an hour of a series preview merely talking about relievers. So, any other topics you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, well, we could switch that from talking about relievers. We could go ahead and talk about probably the best starting pitcher in all of baseball, and talk about that Sandy start against the Padres. Just another dominant start: 7 innings, 4 hits, 0 earned runs, 7 strikeouts, 2 walks. Just really dominant against probably one of the most I want to just best hitting teams. Just that lineup, that steady lineup that the Padres have had this year. And Lewis, what did you see from Sandy going up against that lineup and really handing himself against guys like Soto, Josh Bell, Manny Machado, and not even letting up an earned run?
So the most impressive thing, and I think you can quote me on this, I believe Sandy threw, what was it, 108 pitches in 7 innings?
Let me get that.
If you remember, in the first 3+
108 pitches, 77 strikes.
Right. If you remember, in the first 4 innings, I think he was nearing 80 pitches, and we're not used to seeing Sandy average almost 20 pitches an inning, given the efficiency in which he normally exudes. I believe at one point he was top 6 or 8 in average pitches per inning, because obviously, that is one benefit of being a sinker baller, is that, you're pitching to contact mostly, though he has kind of swing and miss stuff. It's almost like when Rick Porcello was a Tiger, he was very two-seam fastball heavy, but you knew he kind of had better stuff than that, and he was a pitch to contact guy. I think Sandy does that, and the efficiency obviously allows him to pitch more innings, but you had to have been more impressed, I think, in those innings 5, 6, and 7, because really I think that's what defines your start. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And the fact that he was able to get through the next 3 innings in about 30, if not 29 pitches, I mean, like, that's just a testament to a guy who, he gets better as the game goes along. And the fact that he was maintaining his velocity, I believe he was still, peppering 97, 98 mile an hour sinkers in the 6th and the 7th inning. So, like Eli said earlier today, there's very few guys, if any, who consistently go 7 or 8 innings, and obviously we're so fortunate to have a guy, or at least get to watch a guy every 5 days who does that. And baseball fans in general should just be more appreciative of that. But yeah, no, I mean, like, it's funny, like, you wanted me to regale on Kershaw for a little bit. There were times when I would watch Kershaw in like 2013 or 14 when he had kind of reached like the apex of, or at least was like ascending to like something beyond an ace, where for the first 4 innings, you'd be like, oh, it really wasn't the Clayton Kershaw that we are accustomed to seeing. And then at the end of the night, it's like 7 innings, 10 strikeouts, 1 or 0 walks. That's kind of where I was with Sandy's start. It's like he threw 7 scoreless innings, but I still felt like he could have been better. And it's so weird. It's just like, objectively, it's just like 7 innings and not giving up an earned run to a lineup as balanced as the Padres is like, wow, like that's really impressive. But then you look at it and you're like, yeah, but I've seen this guy like take perfect games into the 5th and 6th innings, or like no hitters into the 5th or 6th inning on like a consistent basis. And it's just like, I could expect more, but it's like, if he's going to pitch to his 80th percentile, then like, who really cares? Like, I mean, like, I think teams would sign up for that 100 times out of 100. And yeah, I mean, like, I apologize for being slightly long-winded, but I mean, like, what can you say about the guy who could possibly bring this franchise its first Cy Young award in its 30 seasons of existence? I mean, like, there's something about that. It's like revenge for Kevin Brown. And he, ironically enough, he did it against the team that Kevin Brown went to after 97. So I don't know. I'm a big Sandy Alcantara guy. Just gregarious personality, good with the media, excellent pitcher. So I mean, like, what's not to like? And he hits doubles in Citi Field. So I mean, I really don't know what else to really say about him.
Yeah, and on that start, I wanted to ask Eli, what did you see from Sandy in terms of just, he's striking out batters, striking out opponents. In the first, 3 innings, he had 6 strikeouts, and then he didn't register another strikeout until, I believe, the 7th inning. What did that tell you about Sandy and his ability, maybe not even wanting to strike out other opponents and wanting to get that contact rather than just striking them out as he did maybe in the first 3 innings? And as the game progressed, as he saw more of the lineup, did he just go into more contact? Did he want to strive away from strikeouts? What did you see from that strikeout portion for Sandy in that first game?
Well, I think it's one reason why Sandy is so hard to appreciate unless you're actually watching him and watching him consistently, because the ERA estimators, things like fielder independent pitching, expected ERA, like, they don't think he's as good as he really is. And like, for a lot of pitchers, they have a good case to make that generally when pitchers have a below average strikeout rate, which Sandy does by modern standards, that usually it's hard to be like the very best in the league when that's the case. It's just with him, the quality of his stuff and his improved ability to command it where he wants to, and the ability for him to sequence it in a way that makes so much sense, regardless of who the matchup is, it leads to all this soft contact, all these plays that are easy for the defense to convert. And it allows him year after year after year. It's not even a 2022 thing. It's throughout his career. He overachieves what those estimators think he should do, regardless of the strikeouts. There have been more games this year probably than in most of his career where he has those spurts, right? Where he feels so locked in one time through the order that he's able to strike out most of the guys that he's facing. But that's not usual for him overall. And actually, we've seen some games recently, pointing to the Cincinnati game where he won a complete game and only had 3 strikeouts in that one, where there are times when he's as sharp as ever, and yet he's not getting strikeouts. And that's kind of part of the plan. because he prioritizes going deep into games above everything else. He has the rare kind of quality of stuff and the movement on his pitches that complement each other so well that he's able to get all this type of cheap contact and easy outs that allow him to work as deep into the game as he does. And it's been such a blessing to watch him the way that he is. And I should point out that recently, if any challenger that you might have had in mind for him with the Cy Young, those guys are all falling by the wayside. Even tonight, Aaron Nola, he's one guy that maybe he's second to Sandy in innings pitched and in some other categories, and he got kind of blown up by the Mets tonight. What made Sandy so special this year to this point is that he has not had any of these terrible outings, not a single outing this year where he's truly gotten his ass kicked. He had a couple of those last year, one in Coors Field against the Rockies and one against the Dodgers in LA. So this is where we find out for sure.
I believe, right?
I think first half of the year in both the right in the middle of the year with both of those. And so this, I imagine, that's going to be in his head. And I think he knows how important it is going up against, as we'll get into, an absurdly deep and talented and hot Dodgers lineup. Really, this is one of the final hurdles that he needs to clear in order to clinch a Cy Young. If you could possibly do something like that in August, I think he can if he has a great outing against the Dodgers. That's a lot like what we've been seeing from him throughout this year.
Yeah, and going
I believe he gave up 18 runs in those two starts last year.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. What do you guys see from Sandy at LA? Because it seems like the Dodgers have just been almost his kryptonite as maybe throughout his career. I don't know if I had the numbers, but we could probably get that. Just his starts at Dodger Stadium. Just what have you guys seen from him against the Dodgers? Because it just seems like they are just, they know what to get out of Sandy.
I mean, the one last year may have been a simple case of tipping pitches. I vaguely remember just getting hit hard on everything early in counts as well. I don't know if I think that was just the perfect storm of facing great hitters and them coming in very organized and being able to steal signs perhaps in that situation. That was in the old days before PitchCom. So now there's PitchCom, which if you're looking for, that's something that we don't even bring up anymore. And especially early in the year, we weren't sure exactly what impact it would have. But there are guys like Sandy where really the only way that you totally beat him up is if you know what's coming. And even then, sometimes it doesn't matter. I think that's been a difference this year. And again, it'll be put to the test in this game. There are other guys who have certainly had terrible outings this year, even with sign stealing not in the equation. So I wouldn't read much more into it than simply that, going against a great opponent and have a smart opponent and a prepared opponent. So if there's any team that is going to do it to him again, it could be this Dodgers team, potentially.
Yeah.
Eli, do you think you'd be able to pull up his numbers against Freddie Freeman? Because obviously there's some familiarity there with the years that he faced him between 2018 and last year while Freeman was a Brave. I want to know what Freeman's overall because right now Freddie Freeman may be the best hitter in the National League. Currently, I'm not saying Soto's not the overall best hitter when you balance approach and just everything else. But Freeman right now, I believe, leads the league in hits. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he leads the league in batting average, or maybe Trey Turner is right there. But I would love to know how Freeman does against him, because Freeman is one of those guys who I think he's putting together. He's kind of going into that. He's starting to become a borderline Hall of Famer to me. I think he's got some work to do. And obviously, I definitely will be a test for Marlins pitching the entire weekend, because he just has the propensity to spray the ball all over the field. But the Dodgers overall, I think, just have such a well-balanced lineup, Daniel, and all different facets of their lineup. Every single guy on that team does one, if not multiple things incredibly well. Gavin Lux is an incredible, it took 3 years, but now he's leading the National League. If not, I believe he leads the major leagues in triples. He's tied with somebody on the Indians that I'm forgetting, but he has 7 triples right now. Plays excellent second base. Max Muncy's hitting a $170, but he's still walking at almost an 18% clip. Obviously, Freeman is just kind of a complete hitter. Justin Turner started slow, and he's got an 850 OPS in his last 70 games. So he's kind of become what he's been his 8+ seasons with the Dodgers. Trey Turner, who we haven't really talked about, the Park Vista kid. And then even Cody Bellinger's hitting 9th. Like, you're having a former MVP while he hasn't been good really for a couple of years now. That still just speaks to the depth of this team. And honestly, if you really want to isolate one start, which unfortunately some writers tend to do when they're voting for awards such as the Cy Young Award, if you can see him kind of just like shut down a lineup as balanced and deep and even a bench as good as the Dodgers, then like that's gonna have to be a feather in his cap when he kind of like puts it all, when like it all is said and done, because they just do so many different things. Well, and there's guys that left out, Chris Taylor, like
they did.
my God,
Joey Gallo, who they traded for. Even their backup outfielder Trace Thompson has an OPS
plus
830. Crazy.
And he's got like a great, like JJ Bleday will probably have a double taken away from him this weekend because of how much ground Gallo can cover in the corner outfield spots. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, Gallo is annoying in some aspects, but he's like if you put Javier Baez in the outfield, like power, strikeouts, but he walks a little bit more, and the glove is just like stupid good. But they do, it's just so much well that they do that, like, if he can really shut down that lineup for 7, if not 8 innings, then like, I don't know. I mean, like, Jack Wheeler gave up 6 runs the other day, right? And against his former club, the Mets. Nola's getting beat up tonight. Sandy's just going to continue to separate himself if he stays where he's at.
Yeah, well, let me get back to the Freddie Freeman thing that you brought up. So 22 plate appearances between Freeman and Sandy, and a slash line at 316, 409, but only a 368 slugging. It's just one double in all that time, no other power hitting, and only 1 RBI. So, I mean, overall, it's well below Freddie's normal numbers, and it's a little better than the typical lefty hitter against Sandy, but held him in check overall. There haven't been any of those really costly moments. The only thing that stands out is that 22 plate appearances, only 2 strikeouts. So he's always putting the ball in play against Sandy.
That sounds about right, because he's a sinker baller and Freeman has a long swing. So he's going to, he hits the ball extremely hard too, because, I think his bat path is so long that like it kind of shortens the distance that the ball has to really travel. So he kind of can just like spray the ball all over. Even if he's not hitting doubles, he's still like productive in like a Eddie Stanky way, to cite like an old baseball name, high OBP, low slug guy. But
we miss you too.
Okay, I mean, like, again, Freeman will likely do damage. So I'm glad. Thanks for pulling that up, Eli.
And I think with that, it's a great time to talk about some of the roster moves the Marlins made, and also the injury report, as it is another player that does have to go under TJ. Do you want to start off first with the roster moves, Eli, or do you want to go to the injury report?
Let's do the roster moves first. I'm very excited about the return of Gerard Encarnacion. We've been waiting for him. We barely get to see him at all when he was called up that first time. And he's back on the roster. He's actually in the lineup tonight, but we'll be curious to see how much he plays. He's up here in place of Garrett Cooper. Garrett Cooper, you may have noticed, took a hit by pitch off the helmet. Not a direct shot, thankfully, and one that they're hopeful is not that severe, but he appears to be out for at least this entire road trip. And so that gives a little window, even more so than he had earlier this year, for Encarnacion to prove himself, to stick on the team. I had highlights queued up for him. Why don't I just play the highlights of him? Because it's been 2 months since we saw him in the big leagues. All this stuff is from the last 2 months since he got sent back down to Jacksonville, and he's still doing what he does. He's still hitting for power to all fields, playing a lot of outfield, but also went back to playing some first base now that Lewin is up here. It's opening up some first base playing time down there as well. With this, at this moment, it's pretty clear what the fit is, that he'll be a lot of corner outfield stuff, either in right or in left, especially against when they're playing lefties. So, I mean, the one thing that has been most frustrating about watching this team this year is particularly how much they get destroyed by left-handed pitchers. Like, they're the worst. This is the worst offense in the majors against lefties. And in the minors, Gerard has been destroying them. And he can't really do any worse than what they have been doing in those matchups. So he's going to be automatic in the lineup against lefties. And I think he's going to play close to every single day, either at the corner outfield spots or occasionally at DH. for the near-term future. He deserves it. I think he's hit as many home runs in the minors as any Marlins player this season, 20-something between AA and AAA. So he deserved this. It was just a question of whether there would be a spot that made sense. And unfortunately for Cooper, I mean, it's because of an injury. You'd like to see him earn a spot. They just have a lot of these young outfielder guys, and the only way to make it work is with somebody having to miss time. And with Cooper out, it would just be nice to learn a little more about how much this bat translates to the majors.
Yeah, and the other moves.
Yeah, I mean.
No, go ahead. About Herrera.
No, I when I think of 2010s Cardinals teams that had like the slew of outfielders that just couldn't get playing time because they were all blocked by each other. And I feel like that's where we are now. I mean, like, obviously we have guys on big money contracts, with Garcia and Soler, by big money by our terms. But, it's like, unfortunately, stop these guys from really, like, establishing themselves in the major leagues. And not even establishing themselves, but I guess, like, going through the lumps. Because, like, at the end of the day, like, you need, said number of plate appearances. Obviously, that numbers to really kind of find your swing, I guess, and, like, realize, like, what works for you at the big league level, or, like, and Gerard is a guy who, like, has an asset that we don't see a lot of and haven't seen a lot of with this organization in a while, and that's home. We have guys who could do it in the minors, but give a guy 4 or 5 at-bats 4 or 5 times a week, and, I would say you may win a couple of more games than you're currently winning. So, obviously he has an asset. And I said the same thing about Soler. Like, let him play. Like, he has, like, power, hits the ball hard. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I do, but it's just hard for me to understand why these guys aren't able to play more than they do. But, we committed money, and money talks, unfortunately. So he's been stopped for that reason.
Right. I don't think this is necessarily a bold take to point out that one of these young outfielders, if not more than one, is probably going to get traded over the offseason. They can't move Avi Garcia. Yep. That is a sunk cost. And even Jorge Soler right now, that's an underwater contract until he gets back and proves he's healthy. You just do the math, and all these guys on the 40-man roster between them and now Peyton Burdick and J.J. Bleday and Encarnacion. And who else am I missing? Brian De La Cruz and Jesus Sanchez. And and let's see, anybody else? I mean,
Griffin
Troy Johnson.
Conine, if you really want to.
Well, yeah, I mean, both Griffin Conine and Troy Johnson, they're going to be Rule 5 eligible potentially. So Are they going to leave them unprotected? It's going to be a logjam of these guys, and it's going to be difficult to suss out. Like, I don't think there's not going to be easy answers, regardless of what they perform at the rest of the season. It could be a good problem to have if multiple of these guys really go off the final quarter of the season. It's going to be tough choices, though, with the money that they committed and the way that both of those big contracts have gone down. I mentioned that Encarnacion plays some first base. So, I mean, maybe perhaps if he does it at a high enough level, at a competent level, if the bat is too good to ignore, then all of a sudden you wonder about Lewin Diaz and Cooper, and exactly maybe they get squeezed out as a result of all this. It's a very difficult puzzle. And for the moment, unfortunately, like, it's not a fun conversation to have because almost all these players just have not produced much at the majors this season. It's just one thing to keep in mind as you're watching this down the stretch is why there's a lot of pressure, even in these small samples, even for these rookies, they're going to be under the microscope.
Yeah.
Eli, have you ruminated at all on the possibility of, like, a trade in the offseason where you could see some of these guys maybe going for, I mean, and maybe we don't need it necessarily, but like a Tarek Skubal who, there's concern now about his elbow, but maybe like a team like the Detroit Tigers could use a first baseman like Lewin. I understand they have Spencer Torkelson, but early returns on him haven't been great. Diaz's glove is a lot better than Torkelson's. And then obviously they're going to have Austin Meadows hasn't produced for them this year. They have Riley Green in center field, but at the end of the day, like, I'm kind of been saying with this team, you need to give these teams guys to play. Have any of you guys ruminated any of on the idea of, like, what teams would be fits for maybe like this logjam of outfielders that we have.
I forgot to mention Victor Mesa. Thank you for Navi for bringing that up. He's still
God.
alive. He's at AAA. He's knocking on the door. He's not going to get called up this year. Don't worry about him. The Tigers, that's an interesting one to bring up because they're the only team that's more needy of offense than the Marlins are. I mean, they just got shut out again tonight at home
by the Angels.
They are a disaster. I'm not sure if the fit is going to be there, but they're a team that certainly, if we have a surplus of these kind of bats, then it's something that I'm sure those teams will be talking in the offseason. Once the Tigers actually get a GM again, because for the moment they don't have anybody at the top of their food chain. This was my surprise as of a few weeks ago. Why I was so sure there was going to be more trades happening at the deadline so that you didn't kick all this stuff to the offseason. I thought they'd make some of these difficult choices ahead of time while some of these prospects still have significant value. You know, these guys still have value before you see them fail in the big leagues. And I was surprised that they didn't do anything in that regard to like try to iron out the situation. But by doing it, they really did kind of back themselves into a corner that absolutely you're going to see trades of some kind coming this offseason. I'm pretty sure about that. You know, I was off on the trade deadline stuff, but at this point it's simply going to be a numbers game. They have so many guys. And I guess we could get into as a transition to the injury situation. You know, the reason why they have the surplus is because they call people up. And the reason why there's room to call them up is because the other players are getting hurt. All these injuries are pushing guys to the 60-day IL that opens up space on the 40-man roster. But after the season, you need to shrink it back down to 40 again. And the most recent one, this was kind of expected. I got wind of this more than a day ago about Anthony Bender and the likelihood that elbow was shot and that he would need Tommy John surgery. And they are in the process of setting that up. So he's another guy with this team that he showed a lot of promise when he came back from his injury in the middle of this season. And of course he was good as a rookie as well. To trade him. I don't think they're going to cut him. I think they're just going to stash him on their 40-man roster over the winter, which just means less space for somebody else to deal with. So as I point out on Twitter, you know, I guess it's nice that not nice. I would say compared to the other Tommy John players, the fact that he's exclusively a reliever, that he only has to worry about pitching one inning at a time, he's going to be back in the majors next year at some point. He's not going to miss all of next year in the way that Max Meyer likely will, or even Cody Poteet is a little iffy on that. With Bender, it's a shorter recovery time because it doesn't need to get stretched out again. So that's the silver lining, is that it's painful. It's painful. They don't have many other relievers like him that have same swing and miss potential. He's going to be hard to replace, but they won't necessarily have to replace him. They don't have to worry about this being a career-threatening situation as long as his rehab kind of goes as typical Tommy John rehab goes for relievers.
Yeah, and, you know, now with Anthony Bender, I believe now that's 4 guys who have had Tommy John for the Marlins. And what do you think this says about maybe just the way that these players are just being treated in terms of maybe their health-wise, to have this many Tommy Johns, you know, to this active roster? Has this really happened before, maybe with the Marlins or another team? Because I personally, I think this is, you know, I think 1 is enough in terms of just Tommy John surgeries. And to have 4 in one season, where do you think that stands with the Marlins and maybe the medical staff?
I wouldn't say it's like super unusual. I could just point to, I mean, as recently as last year, I think the Tampa Bay Rays had something similar. This year, they have plenty of injuries as well. You look around the league, and there's at least one team every year that has severe arm injuries to this extent. What's unfortunate is that this is a Marlins team that it's so critical for them to keep their arms healthy. I mean, that was supposed to be the advantage they had over most other teams, is that having all these impact arms that are affordable and have just are really well-rounded pitchers when healthy. And if they're not going to be able to keep their guys healthy, then you just worry about the competitive possibilities of this team moving forward, for a team that spent quite a bit of its energy reorganizing its athletic training department over the offseason, medical services as well. They made new hires over the offseason to bring in some of Kim Eng's own people and for them to not yield any better results when it comes to keeping guys healthy. That sucks. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. And it's hard to really go any deeper than that, other than to say that this is something they should be investing a lot of time and resources in researching the best ways to keep these players healthy. Because you need to have some sort of advantage over these larger market teams, or these teams that are more complete at developing hitters. Like, you need to have an advantage somewhere. And if you can't trust your players to stay healthy, I don't see how it adds up to being a competitive team.
Yeah. What did that last line say to you guys right there? Sixto Sanchez, mild discomfort on his shoulder. He's scheduled to start throwing again on Monday. What are your guys' take on Sixto just having another shoulder discomfort? And does this now truly mean that we might not ever see him again pitching again for the Marlins?
It just reinforces that we're not going to see him pitching this year for sure. I mean, any kind of setback at this point. Yeah. They weren't counting on getting anything from him, and now I think this all but seals the deal that for him it's a 2023 or bust for a guy that is going to be out of minor league options next year too. Like, if he struggles next year, if he's healthy enough to even struggle, then they can't even send him down to the minors moving forward. It's been very tragic. And just to point out the discrepancy, that's a shoulder issue. That's not a Tommy John issue. As much as it's unfortunate to see all the guys that blown out their elbows this year, that recovery is a little bit more routine, and that's something that's a little bit more predictable. And with Sixto, this is an injury. It's highly unusual to miss like 2 full years due to something going wrong physically. And with him, the shoulder has proven to be a lot more difficult to like recover from than an elbow has. And you really just can't count on much of anything from him moving forward.
I've said it so many times this year, and the narrative has started to kind of illustrate itself in my head and more as it's played out. He is like the Marlins equivalent of Alex Reyes. Like, it's just like so much hype, but yet it's never fully materialized because of the consistent strain of injuries. I mean, like, he is Giancarlo Stanton light in his ability to stay healthy. It's sad. I mean, like, you hate, like, one of the worst things in sports is when you see a guy that has so much potential and so much expectation touted upon him, and then for us to only get about like a 53 inning glimpse of it, I believe that's what he threw in 2020, is, it's sad, because you thought at first that like he was gonna be like, I mean, like, Sandy was already establishing himself as an ace, but at the end of the 2020 season, the talk primarily centered on Sixto Sanchez as the eventual ace of the Miami Marlins. If not, he was already then. And then, like, now it's just like, I don't even know if he'll be a starting pitcher when he comes back, because he's gonna be so like babied, and I don't mean that like a condescending way, but like, you have to be careful with a guy who really hasn't thrown a competitive pitch, like you noted, Eli, in almost more than 2 years now. So it's just like, what do you even expect from him? Like, if he throws 20 innings next year, whenever those come, that would be a win in and of itself, just so that he's even pitching again. Because, like, you don't even know at this point when you miss that much time, and it's so seldom that we even see guys, like, come back fully from, like, this prolonged of an absence.
Yeah. And just, with that, I think that was a good time to also just go into lineups and now finally get things started between the Dodgers and the Marlins. A lot of time talking about a lot of things that happen, roster moves, a lot of injuries. But now let's get this series preview started. The LA Dodgers going to get against the Miami Marlins. Some really interesting pitching matchups for this 3-game series. Miami out west. It will be late night at the ballpark, so it'll be pretty late games. And here you can see the lineups between both teams. And I think obviously the number one thing that sticks out is just all the red you see in the Dodgers. It seems like almost every player at least maybe decent at something. And just looking at this lineup, it's just really incredible. You have Mookie, Trey, Freddie, Will Smith, Justin Turner. You have Chris Taylor down there batting seventh, or excuse me, sixth. And then you have Trace Thompson, who's also having a pretty good year. And then you have Gavin Lux down there at ninth. Just for you guys, what sticks out between this Dodgers lineup and just look at this lineup, and even you mentioned Joey Gallo, he's not even there. Just that shows you also how deep the Dodgers are.
Yeah, probably Gavin Lux batting ninth. I mean, where would he bat in the Marlins lineup? Like, he's be the 2 or the 3 hitter. He's awesome. He's awesome. He's an awesome player. And I guess he's the one that his batted ball quality doesn't jump out at you, but he's an incredibly gifted and versatile overall hitter. So many of these players are. Even these bit role players that they bring in perform. For the most part, these are guys that already probably 7 out of these 9 guys you already know and respect very well. But then you have Hanser Alberto and Trace Thompson. Trace Thompson's been as hot as anybody on this team over in recent weeks. I looked it up, and his WRC his OPS over the last month is like over 1,000.
Yeah, he's been really
Trace
great.
Thompson, for a guy that had been discarded by a bunch of other organizations. Mm-hmm. He's a journeyman, and yet they get the best out of him, in addition to obviously the blue chip talented players that they brought in at the top. It's in the same way as we saw with the Braves very recently. It's very freeing for them that at least the top half of their order is like the same every single game. It's just set it and forget it. It's always Mookie and Trey and Freddie Freeman. This is a team that in previous years, they've leaned pretty hard on resting guys and being very proactive when it comes to that. But Freddie Freeman has kind of talked them out of it. He plays every single day. And so that top of the lineup is merciless, and they set the tone for everybody else. And everybody else is pretty good as well. It's just, there's not enough praise that you could give this team for how stacked they are. There's a reason why they have the best record in baseball and arguably the best offense in baseball.
Yeah. And with that, I also wanted to mention really quick. Oh, hold up. Alex Carver has joined us. The special unannounced guest. Alex, you missed a lot of Sixto talk. What's up? Before we were talking about Gerardo Encarnacion, maybe you could help, reiterate just about Gerard and maybe what you've seen from him since he was caught up to the majors after the Mets series. Maybe people should expect. Maybe didn't even watch that part.
Yeah, no. Gerard is awesome, man. Huge power. With the huge power, though, is going to come some swing and miss for him. That's the player that he is. I like his first base play. I think he's good there. He also has a really good arm in right field. I'll stick to it that what I've always said about him is that the routes in the outfield are not the best, right? Mm-hmm. But he's not bad out there. He's just I think he fits better as first baseman. It does waste his arm, yeah. But you've seen that arm already this year, right? He's making some great throws. It's happened in Jacksonville all year too. So yeah, he's exciting, man. I'm really stoked for him. That guy is solid. If he can get his full chance and put it together, then he could be really good. But yeah, the swing and miss is going to persist with him.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention a player that's actually coming back. Not in the Marlins, but on the Dodgers. We are going to see the season debut of Dustin May, another young pitcher for the Dodgers. And Lewis, you followed Kershaw a lot. Just what have you seen from Dustin May, and maybe what people should expect from seeing him now making his season debut this year?
So Eli can attest to this. He, as I noted, a lot of the Dodgers pitchers are excellent on a per innings basis, and I think Dustin May falls into that category because he's never really given you bulk in the way of innings per se. And I'm pretty sure he's never thrown more than, and I could be wrong on this, more than 70 innings at the majors in a season. But I could be wrong on that because he did have the Tommy John last year. But Dustin May is just like Sandy in the sense of that he has ridiculous stuff. He's got a 98 to 101 mile an hour two-seamer. It's got ridiculous movement, but then again, he just doesn't put away guys with the clinical nature that you'd expect a late inning reliever would. Because
most innings 56 in 2020.
Exactly. So he does. And yet he was excellent in those innings. But he's another one of those guys big stuff, but like he just surprisingly doesn't strike guys out, despite the fact that he throws so hard, but he also is just very good on a run prevention basis. And the Dodgers tend to do that a lot. I mean, like, listen, like they're conservative to I guess not to a fault. They're like the Rays with like more money, in that they're just very good at getting the most out of their pitchers. I mean, we saw it with Tyler Anderson, and I don't doubt that they'll do that with a guy like Dustin May. I mean, like, listen, like if he goes out and he throws 5 shutout innings, it's the Marlins. That's not going to take anything away from Dustin May. He's excellent, but he's one of those guys that they're going to lean on as guys like Kershaw retire. Obviously, Trevor Bauer will likely never pitch for that team again. Urias is nearing free agency, but he may be a guy you want to invest in. Talk is that Walker Buehler may need Tommy John. So, yeah, Dustin May is – I mean, he's a guy that you could put on to kind of be a part of that next – or at least, like, continue the trend of great pitching for LA. But yeah, no, I mean, like he's just great, and obviously I still think he can get even better, so it just remains to be seen. But and despite the fact that it's against the team we're covering, to see him make a season debut, just appreciate it from an admiration standpoint as to how good some of these guys are, and he's definitely one of them.
Right. I wanted to touch on tonight starter Tyler Anderson, who's about to take the mound. Like in an offseason where it seems like almost every free agent has been a bad deal or gone off to a bad start, this guy's been one of the best values on the entire free agent market from last year. He signed a 1-year deal, $8.5 million. And all he's been is he leads the Dodgers in innings pitched. Nobody would know that. Nobody would know that unless you follow the Dodgers. That Tyler Anderson, he leads them in innings pitched. And he's been doing it at such a high level that he was an all-star this year for the first time in his career as somebody that got very little attention even prior to last year, spent most of his career with the Rockies. And all of a sudden he's not throwing hard. He's the opposite in stuff-wise. He's on the other end of the spectrum. He barely cracks 90 with his fastball. But yet he's been an amazing pitcher all year for this Dodgers team, and he is going to be probably in the long line of lefties to dominate the Marlins, unless Encarnacion kind of leads them to something different. But otherwise, he's a key player in this series, Tyler Anderson, who obviously and understandably goes overlooked given all the actual star power the Dodgers have on the roster.
Give us your Dustin May
he's almost
talk,
like another
Isaac.
Rich Hill for them.
Say that again.
Give us your Dustin May analysis, Isaac.
Is he confirmed for tomorrow?
Isaac's so pretty.
Yeah.
Wow.
He is making it. Yeah, they announced last week he's making his season debut tomorrow.
Dustin May, man. It's that he's not a lefty and he's not a soft thrower, so that might go in the Marlins' favor. But at the end of the day, he's a tremendously talented right-handed pitcher. He's got beautiful hair. I'm very excited to see him. He's looked great.
Can you guys name for me really quick the former Marlins pitchers on the Dodgers? Can you guys?
Andrew Heaney.
All right.
I know one.
I think I know who you like.
Wait,
who's Alex's guy?
Off the top of my head?
Yeah, he's a reliever.
Oh, Alex Vesia?
There we go.
Yeah.
Is he still? How's he doing?
He's doing good. He's got like a low 3.
Fantastic.
ERA.
Yeah. 2.77 ERA, 1.23 WHIP.
You see, look, okay, so now I remember our arguments
40 innings
earlier this year. It's a horrible trade. I think now
It was.
the fact that Miami's out of contention and they have 4 or 5 more years of Vesia, now you can say it was probably in hindsight, which is always 2020. Now
No, it was a bad trade then. It's a bad trade now.
No,
it's
if Miami was,
no, it was. It was a bad trade.
If Miami is 10 games over 500 right now and Floro is pitching very well, I might tell you.
That was a bad trade.
That's a win-win trade. Don't start
Isaac,
me.
Isaac, is Dylan Floro a closer?
No, neither is Alex.
Is Alex Vesia a closer?
No.
Let me stop you guys there really quick.
Vesia's not a
On the
closer.
Marlins right now, is Vesia the closer?
No.
No.
Who is?
No.
Nardi?
No.
Who's the closer? Not Tanner
No.
Scott.
It was so peaceful with us three here.
It ain't Tanner Scott. Like, who's the
Just
closer?
because Tanner Scott sucks doesn't mean that Alex Vesia would be the closer.
He would be the closer. He would.
All right, let me give you guys this. Lewis and I were talking about this earlier when Eli had some problems, just us two. We were talking about Dylan Floro, and would you guys see him as a possible contract extension?
No,
we were talking about giving him something like
I hope they
Chafin.
learned their lesson with Blyer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no.
I don't know what Eli had to say about it before I got in, but I don't know how old Floro is. Granted,
31.
31?
It's like 31, 32.
Yeah.
His velocity has fluctuated so much this year, and the injury, I wouldn't do it.
Yep, same. Agreed.
Yeah, so what we proposed was like a low AAV incentivized deal. Like maybe like 2 years at like 4 to 7 million, no more 4 million with like incentives to make it like 6 or 7 based on games finished or like innings pitched kind of thresholds that he would have to hit.
That's a deal.
Because
Go ahead.
I mean, listen, like for a team that doesn't spend a lot of money, you need to be really sure. But yeah. I think he has a track record at least, and I reiterated that like volatility among relievers is about as real as the sky is blue. But like I think he's done enough to where like I wouldn't be that upset if I just added another year of club control onto him and like said fuck it to the last year of arbitration. Like I just like I think he's at least maybe earned one extra year, but again. Like I could be an idiot, and like it could be like when we traded for Hunter Cervenka, and we're like, oh my god, we got this guy with so much club control, and then he just regressed so horrendously and was just terrible. So like it's like
I remember
that's a name that Kevin probably doesn't know, but you know,
who did he trade for Cervenka to the Braves?
I don't remember, but I like again that was like 2016, right? Like when like we were. Like had legitimate playoff aspirations until like, you know, not even gonna like go there. But
I mean, look guys, I'm gonna be honest. I think from Apollo 13, there's like 835 things that need to go right before they should even consider this. I think there's so many more pressing needs for the team than whether or not to give Floro an extra year of control. I don't think we're beating the right bush right now.
Yeah,
there's a Mattingly reference in there too.
Reliever got to have something to stand out. Like with as you mentioned, Lewis, with and Fernie Seymour and Michael Mader. Yeah, there are my guys. Yeah, and Fernie Seymour, I think Bahamas, but yeah, reliever, you got to have something to stand out if you're gonna make money. And this player, I mean, at least with Blyer, when they got him, it was like okay, he has the control and he's the change of pace guy, and he gets tons of ground balls. Of course, that changed now, right? This year it changed. But what does Blyer do to really stand out? Because relievers like this are a dime a dozen. You can find another Dylan Floro without having to pay the guy. So I would say
that's true. And again, like that's a thought that like crossed my mind. I mean, I'm posing the question. I'm not saying like I'm not standing outside on like the side of the street saying like extend Dylan Floro. Right. Like if the Marlins traded Dylan Floro in the offseason, I'm not gonna cry the way I thought I was going to when we traded Dan Uggla for Omar Infante. Like it's not gonna. That was
actually a pretty good trade. That was a good trade.
No, I know, and I was pitching, and I told Eli
that
like
from
a war standpoint, we won the trade. Dunn.
Yeah, they won that trade. It was 100%. I'm with you.
Doesn't Mike Dunn lead the team in relief like appearances or innings?
Left-handed games appeared, I believe, from her pitching.
Wow, what a stat!
Retire his jersey.
Dunn, you get Mike Dunn, you get your everyday second baseman for 2 years in Omar Infante. For Dan Uggla, who kind of a little bit fell off, that's a good one.
A little bit fell off, dude. He like gradually just struck out more and more as his forearms got.
I mean, at least they can celebrate the Ozuna trade because that's like the biggest century. So yeah.
Going again, I wanted to go back to this lineup. Before we were talked about it really quick. Let's go really quickly before we get to predictions. I want to go mention Isaac and Alex. Again, looking at this Dodgers lineup, we've seen the Marlins lineup a million times. It's almost the same people. Looking at this Dodgers lineup, what really stands out to you guys when looking at this 1 through 9? And we mentioned before you guys got here that Gavin Lux really stands out because he's 9 with Dodgers, but you put him in Miami, he's 2 or 3 easily.
Yeah, there's no weakness. That's what stands out to you is that there's very little weakness to this lineup. Like even with Hanser Alberto playing,
I was gonna say,
even with Hanser Alberto playing, like for backup, I guess it's okay, But that's literally the only one that you can really point to. I mean, even Trace Thompson, who probably isn't. Well, at least his numbers look like he is, but he's probably not a starter either. But still, I mean, these guys get it done, and they have great lineup protection. If you believe in lineup protection, I do. Some people don't, but there's just there's no forgiveness from one guy to the next, especially in their top 6. I would say at least 5, definitely 5. So yeah, it's a team full of talent. It's a team that just there's no quit. So it's and they're pitch well too. So.
And in that first lineup, we're not seeing Joey Gallo, we're not seeing Max Muncy, we're not seeing Cody Bellinger.
Exactly. And that's why you have Hanser Alberto and guys like that in there. But still, even with those guys in there, this lineup's scary. And I think that's where you can be like, holy, like, wow. Like I think what is very telling as you look at these side by side on your screen, look at a first place team and by far probably the best team, if not one of the best teams in baseball, next to Miami's lineup. And just look at the coloration of this chart here from StatCast. You'll see a winning team versus
I love this
not
lineup situation, Eli. This is the best.
And this
just look at the comparison. Compare it. You should screenshot this and make it like Fish Stripes, like Twitter header profile picture until something changes.
The Atlanta one is more impressive. The Atlanta
coloring book,
and also that Max Muncy, he has been as hot as anyone in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, he's starting off slow,
and they're still sitting him. That's how you know this team is loaded. I'm a big Hanser Alberto fan. I loved him when he was with Baltimore. I'm a big fan of that player. So this team has no weaknesses, honestly.
You mentioned very quickly Gallo and Bellinger. They're platoon players. They're small side platoon players on the Dodgers.
Exactly.
Because it's how it is. There are guys better than them on this team. Where
would they fall into the lineup, into the Marlins lineup?
And
Bellinger and Gallo.
Their player development, I'll never forget that. Keibert Ruiz was such a highly touted prospect. He was way above Will Smith. And Will Smith ended up being the guy that, took them to the World Series and performed well in the postseason in 2020. That Will Smith became the better catcher and they traded Keibert. It's like, that's how you know they can
Will Smith is disgusting.
They can poop hitters out of their butt whenever they want. Just like Atlanta can.
Whatever happened to James Outman? Is he still there?
He's not at the moment. They've sent him back down after they acquired probably Gallo. I think that was
another
related move.
Who was pretty hot.
Yeah.
Like look at the mix too. Like it's not just Freddie Freeman who hits for power. Like look at the sprint speed. Like I know a lot of people at StatCast look at sprint speed. How many guys are near or over 30? And there's one over 30 and multiple that are right at it. So it's like they have everything. They have speed. They have power. They play in a pretty hitter-friendly environment as it is. But still, I mean, this team can do literally everything: pitch, hit for power, hit for average, run. It's not a team that has many weaknesses, and we see what their record is. So yeah, it's
they're literally like
a hard weekend for Miami for sure.
They're literally like the popular quarterback in high school who also gets the girl, and then the Marlins are just like the kid getting thrown in a dumpster. When you look at just like overall player development and on-field performance over like the last 8 or 9 years, but I don't know. I mean, to be fair, the Dodgers can't always. They don't have the best of luck either when it comes to maintaining starting pitcher health either. I mean, we've seen it with Kershaw. Obviously, Buehler had Tommy John in college, and now he's probably going under the knife again. Urias has had his durability issues. Gonsolin hasn't really been worked as much as he has this year. So, they're
bullpen.
An excellent team, but they're not without fault. I know. I mean, to be fair, they do have Craig Kimbrell, and while the suggested metrics like FIP is saying he's vastly underperforming his ERA. They have flaws, but not enough that'll prevent them from sweeping us this weekend. At least not if Sandy doesn't go out and shove on Sunday.
And with that prediction from Lewis, that's a little taste from now going into our favorite time, prediction time, talking about this series against the Marlins and the Dodgers. Can the Marlins take another series from an NL West team? Can they make it 2 for 2 on NL West team beating the series? As we look here at some of our predictions and our past predictions, let's start off with Isaac. You have to go first. You came in late. What is your prediction for this series as we are taking a look at our super followers?
This is it's a tough one to predict. I'm gonna go with the obvious choice. I think Miami salvages a win, whether it's with Luzardo or whether it's with Sandy. So I think they lose 2 out of 3, and I think the MVP will be lefty crusher Justin Turner. That's what I put, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Justin Turner, because I know. Yeah, I gave
I need
Bella
the confidence Riley has. I need Riley's confidence in real life.
for real, bro.
Sweep, Jacob Stallings MVP. I need that.
You're drunk if you think that.
Alex,
But he has hit well over the last couple of weeks. So, I will give it to him there.
Alex, give us your predictions.
I'll agree with Isaac and say they lose 2 of 3. They're going to get 1, and I think it's going to be Sandy's start. But yeah, whichever one it is, I'll say that they win or they lose 2 of 3 and somehow salvage 1 in a close game. So that's going to be my prediction. There's a lot of guys that you can pick for MVP. I mean, you probably can't go wrong. But I'll just pick the most obvious one and go with Freeman because he's one of the best players in baseball. So Freddie Freeman MVP. There you go.
All right. Lewis, this is one of your first predictions in a long time doing it actually on the stream. What is your prediction for the series and your MVP?
I'll err on the side of unoriginality and say 2 of 3. I know I said that, I still wouldn't be shocked if they swept, and a lot of that, too, just rests with my concerns with the bullpen and, who Mattingly is going to award 9th inning opportunities to, whether that's Floro or Scott, or we just grow another reliever and he winds up throwing big innings in the 9th, which, again, we'll see. 2 of 3, I think the Dodgers take, and then maybe Mookie Betts just hits a couple of home runs this weekend. But I am reiterating my text that I said that I think Justin Turner at one point in this series will hit a big RBI double at one point because the man just has a propensity to hit doubles at will. So 2 of 3 for the Dodgers, and then Mookie Betts.
All right, Eli. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yep. I'm back. Just like a lot of these other guys, Marlins winning just 1 game in the series. Not much explaining that needs to be done. My MVP is going to be number 9 hitter for the Dodgers, Gavin Lux.
Ooh.
I think he's probably gonna be one of the better hitters in this entire series. Definitely starting this first game and probably the second game, hopefully all 3. He's good. And the Marlins really could use a player like him, pre-arbitration eligible, who absolutely rakes.
And before I give my predictions, let me give some predictions for some of the guys who aren't here. Grant has Dodgers sweep, Mookie Betts MVP. And Kevin gave me his prediction really early in the morning, 8:44 in the morning. He had his prediction ready. Marlins take 2 out of 3, MVP Sandy.
And Noah gave me his prediction, the Marlins winning 1 game, and Trey Turner as his MVP.
All right. For me, I have Marlins take 1, MVP Will Smith. Will Smith, not the actor, the catcher, MVP.
I like the Will Smith pick, honestly.
I think he's gonna rate.
It's ridiculous.
Did we all have it the same, or did Alex? Did you have it a sweep?
Oh,
or did we all have it the same?
No, I think Kevin is the only one that has different.
Okay.
Kevin said the Marlins will win the series.
Right? Grant
Grant
has
said the Marlins will win the
Dodgers
series.
sweep.
Okay, and Kevin has the Marlins winning the series. So
yeah,
I think the rest of us agree though.
Let me see.
I think his public
Marlins take 2 out of 3.
working him too late.
Well, anything anyone wants to mention really quick before the game starts?
Just a heads up that this West Coast trip continues next week. So it's another late stream on Monday night where we will have a special guest to be announced later, a first-time guest.
Where do they go next week?
To Oakland.
That's going to be a fun series.
Oh, my God. Dude, those may be the lowest rated games of the last 5 years. And that's just based on how they're playing. I mean, did you guys see what they did with Elvis Andrus? He was about to hit a plate appearance threshold to get an option in his contract for the next year, and they cut him, and now he's signed with the White Sox.
I want to know how that StatCast lineup is going to look. Who's going to have more blue, the Marlins or the A's?
The A's make us look like the Dodgers in terms of how they spend money. It is ridiculous. Yeah, I mean Sandy. If Sandy pitches one of those games, he's gonna throw a no hitter or something.
Sandy's not due to pitch those games, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested in the attendance figures for that game because it's the 2 lowest teams in the league, the Marlins and the A's. So
you know what? I think the Rays are lower than the Marlins.
No, they're not. They're not. The Braves are not lower than the Marlins.
No, the
attendance.
Marlins
Anyways,
are last.
they're second to last of the A's.
They've been
The
last.
A's are last.
In that Trey Turner piece I wrote, I found out, I went back on MLB.com or ESPN because they keep attendance figures. Every year except the COVID shortened season, I think they've been at or like second to last in attendance. And it's just them in Tampa. Yeah. It makes no sense because it's like baseball players and like football players. You'd think that there were, and so many snowbirds that like live in like Fort Lauderdale or something, like can just commute to Miami and just like watch a game. But like, I don't know. I mean, like, when you're like 70, like, do you really want to watch the Marlins? Like, I wouldn't want to spend my
Oakland,
days,
Miami,
like, watching
Tampa, and then Pittsburgh.
I mean, like, I really like wouldn't want to like see them. Like, I feel you, bro.
A final question from me before we go, Danny. It could be a simple yes or no from everybody here. If Braxton comes out and does well against this lineup, does he solidify himself as a good mid-end starter?
He's already solidified in my opinion.
No, I don't know.
If he has a good start.
I think he's close to doing it. I think if he does what he's been doing against Los Angeles, then you got to say that this guy is like, okay, like he's good, right? So we'll see.
Well, he's already done the next best lineup he's faced this year. Arguably was that you could say the Astros, maybe, and that was one of his great starts. So I'm interested to see what he does. I don't think it's a huge statement one way or the other, but he certainly.
I actually really look forward to his starts. Like, even if he's not like an ace, like there's just guys like I used to love like reading Dallas Keuchel box scores because even if like I know he wasn't gonna like strike out 15 or at least like that opportunity was there, like I just like seeing guys like that have success. Like I was always like a Brock Holt guy because I just wanted to see what position he was playing when he was a Red Sox. So it's just like I love Braxton Garrett, dude. I mean, he's got like a 3.67 ERA and like 70 innings pitched. I know like nowadays that's not. I mean that means more than it did like 10 years ago, but like to me he's doing what the White Sox would have loved Keuchel to have done, at least relative to what he's being paid and like what his stuff projects he will do. So like, and plus like his walk rate is just like continually going down, even though like he was slightly wild the other day. Like, dude, he's just kind of made the fastball. Like Alex, like when he was in the minors,
fastball command,
it was better, but like wasn't he because when I did it, I think I was with Kevin when he made his season debut against Atlanta. He hit 94 a couple of times. And like, I know like sometimes when you have TJ, it takes a couple of years for that velocity to really rebuild itself. But like, dude was like consistent 92, 93. Like some like lefties are funky in their own way. Like that plays. You don't need 96 sometimes.
Right. Yeah, if you're commanding it, which has been his crux, then he's figured it out. So I'm proud of him. Anyways.
And with that, I think that does it for.
All right, guys. My girlfriend's sitting right next to me. She's getting
one of our longest, but we'll probably continue this conversation. But for Daniel, for Eli,
that's fine.
Isaac, Alex, for Lewis, who made his return, for Kevin in band camp, Grant in college. This is Fish Stripes Live. Always go fish.
We got to end it off right.
All right, guys.
We got to.